Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Curious Competitor Podcast. I am your host, current New Jersey Devils defenseman, Connor Carrick. Thank you for joining us today, wherever you are in the world, alongside my guest, Dr. Charlie Weingroff. Charlie is a highly sought after, I call him physical therapist because it's the easiest word available, but he stepped out of physical therapy school and into the NBA, consulting with pro sport at the age of 22. He has a powerlifting background. He has squatted over 800 pounds in official competition. He was with the Marine Corps Special Operations Command as a therapist with them. He was a part of the Nike Executive Performance Council, and he is currently one of the leaders of sports science, the sports science program behind Team Canada Olympic Basketball. So he is really a person and a professional that a lot of professional athletes will seek if having any issues. He is a wide-ranging individual. We get into his love for Disney today, his well-rounded sense of passion for life, his professionalism really comes through in our talk today. Thank you to Charlie for joining us, and thank you, our listener. I guess today, I think it's a really cool time to talk because we're kind of coming out of this quarantine, which has been like totally unparalleled circumstance for a lot of athletes. Amateur, I get a lot of amateurs that listen, for on all my social media channels, like, hey, Connor, what workout should I do? And generally I can point them in the right direction on, who to follow to educate. Hey, follow Charlie Weingroff. He's posted cool, information, to start. But I also think you've been around a lot of really high performing systems, everything from, your time with the Marine Corps to working at Nike to Team Canada Olympics. I think that you, number one, I want to know a lot more about you because I don't know much of your past, just from, we've only met a handful of times, as a client when we were treating, out in New York. But, let's start with just the origin story, really. Charlie, I know you, went to physical therapy school, stepped in the NBA at an early age. You end up going back down to the minor leagues. I don't know much about that story. I was just kind of reading up on your website, and then you do eventually get back to the NBA. I think you're an interesting figure to talk to about training, as you yourself are built like a brick shithouse, having squatted, as much as you have, and you're kind of a legend that way. And then your time with the Marine Corps, I view you as number one, one of the first guys I call if I have any hip, shoulder, abdominal, any issue, on the East Coast when I need help. But you kind of seem to me like one of the coaches' coach. You kind of consult to the consultants, and you're really high end at your craft. And I know you've proven that to me. Just I'm kind of a nerd for the stuff and try to find and work with the best people that I can afford and find. But what was your origin story into physical therapy? As you were coming out of college, what was kind of the start of your career to where you are now today?
Yeah, I actually never had it in my head to have the degree of physical therapy. It doesn't, when I was coming up, I was probably just like everybody else that played sport. And at some point, the large percentage of us do not get the opportunity to play at the professional levels as adults. And I always just wanted to be in sports. So my game plan was to become an athletic trainer, which, in my mind is very similar to physical therapist. I think we all know that, the way certain roles are and cultures are cultivated, physical therapists and athletic trainers are very, very different. But the baseline education for me, because I could say it, I went through both, they're not terribly different for treating orthopedic and athletic injuries. Now, an athletic trainer has no, basis to be dealing with folks that have medical illnesses or strokes or things like that. But when I met my advisor after the first year of undergrad, she said, you can do everything you want to do, because my game plan was to go get a master's or a PhD and be an athletic trainer, probably at the college level. She said, just go to physical therapy school instead, because you have the grades to do it. And if you never ever want to be a physical therapist in a traditional sense, you'll probably be more competitive for the athletic training positions that you want. And what's very interesting is that what happened was I went to physical therapy school and I was very competitive for the athletic training positions that I wanted. Pretty much every job initially, probably all the way up to the opportunity I got at MARSOC, Marine Corps Special Operations Command. I don't know that I would have gotten as far in the process or even gotten the role if I wasn't a physical therapist. And the reality is that probably only for a very few years since I finished PT school in 1999, I want to say I probably only had like what you would consider like a 9 to 5 as a physical therapist, maybe a year and a half, if that. Because I was always able to demonstrate, even if I was working for someone else, I was always able to demonstrate that my skill set was worth something to give me a unique setup, even if it was in the private sector. And even to that end, it was probably only 3 years where, I'm subtracting all the time in basketball. I'm subtracting all the time in the Marine Corps. And I'm certainly subtracting everything from now because a lot of people don't know. There are people at all levels that have no idea that I'm a physical therapist because they see a lot of the messages or the things that I do that you mentioned before are all more fitness or training related. And then there's the other way. There's people that have they have no idea that like, oh, you train people too? I'm like, okay, like they only know me as a physical therapist. And I probably break a lot of the advice and rules that I give to others where you can't be good at everything. And I'll say, right in front of the camera, I'm not good at everything. I do find that because I've been able to either make or be a part of different situations, I've been able to spend significant periods of time only doing one, whether it be fitness, whether it be data analytics, which is the lowest end of maybe something that and I don't even really put myself in that category, but I do feel like as a therapist or a coach, I actually know what to do when the sports scientists give us that information. So that's kind of the educational piece. But I wouldn't have this pedigree, if you will, which I'll let other people decide, not me, if I wasn't a physical therapist, if I didn't go to physical therapy school. I would not. There's no way I would have gotten these opportunities because a lot of them were only because I got found through a physical therapy setting, or the actual job description required a physical therapy, even though that's not what it was. That's not what the job was. Yeah. So that's I'm certainly glad I went that route. And the God's honest, physical therapy school was probably easier than high school for me. It was not terribly challenging from an academic standpoint. So yeah, that's kind of that piece in terms of how I found physical therapy. Dr. Tina Whalegum was her name, and that was my advisor. And if she didn't get up in me to try physical therapy school, I would not have. It was never on my radar. It was never something to consider.
Well, and so you graduate from physical therapy school, which maybe for your goals at the time, you were on your way to becoming overly educated and over prepared on purpose. So, good for your advisor at the time on helping you. But what was the transition? You do walk into the MBA, and then eventually do go to MARSOC. What were some of your key initial learning points with the MBA? And I know you're back in basketball now, so we can talk about, what Charlie Weingroff is coaching and teaching and treating, now versus then. And then, kind of that middle bit where, how did you land the role with MARSOC, and, where were some of your greatest transition points as a care provider where you really started to take your stuff to the next level? Because I've seen lots of people that touch my body. It's my asset. I'm always trying to unlock whatever key to better performance I can. There's a lot of people out there with physical therapy degrees, but it's clear that you have this commitment to ongoing experience and education that has launched you into the realm you're at now.
Well, to address the last part, there's a couple things that I'm okay saying about, or if someone has a nice compliment from me like that, I'll be like, yeah, that's true. I don't there's a and maybe we'll talk about it at some point. As you know, and most people know, I'm a very big professional wrestling fan.
Yep.
We'll talk about the other thing that I know is the hashtag, which isn't my hashtag, but the Vince McMahon, who obviously owns WWE and blah blah blah. He's an eccentric cat and very interesting character. He has a line that said, "I am better than no man, but I have never met a man better than me." Now, I'm not. That's his line, not mine. But whether it's, we all just saw the Michael Jordan documentary, or whoever it is in hockey, or whoever, like these people that are very flattered and continue to get accolades, but they just never stop. Like I absolutely have every intention. There's no championship belt for being recognized in what I do, other than perhaps having a very happy life, however somebody defines that. But I don't know how to stop. I don't know what my parents put in the cereal when I was little, but I have no way of understanding how it's cool to be, second best. Because I'm second best a lot. I'm third, fifth, 35th. I finished last a lot. But there's no, it's never okay. And when you say, like, I'm trying to learn more, I don't know anybody that has been around 20 plus years now, like I have, even though I I carry myself juvenile, and I probably started a little early. I got out of the blocks at a young age, in terms of when I became in the professional space. But I don't know what it is, that, because there's no thing that I think about. It's just that I have to do this. Like, I have to know this information because I'll be able to be better, for this person. And if I'm better for that person, or like when you say I certainly have a big role in the trainer space in terms of being a consultant and an educator. If I can help them, then I help all their people. And I can't imagine there being a more special thing. Like, for instance, if I help you and you do something very, very special for your team, like, I kind of almost feel a part of the success of all those guys and people part of the organization, even though I'm not. It's just what drives me to be part of something just bigger than just me. But in order to, I think, in order to be bigger than just yourself, you have to make yourself this machine, this monster, like, where people don't even understand, where I don't know how much of it's true, because I never really was around Jordan, or some of the players that I work with now, like, what they're really like, because you never know, like, unless you're there, as you well know, being in pro sports, what the media says is quite ridiculous. That part is part and parcel, and I don't know how to slow down in terms of, I don't ever want mediocre to be a magnet, and I keep pushing it off, and I definitely continue to learn in as many different ways as possible. I probably don't take, and I think it's part of where I'm at in terms of my evolution, where I'm being forced to change. I remember there was years I probably took, where I got on a plane and I gave up a whole, 3, 4, sometimes 6, 7 days, probably once a month for about 2 or 3 years, to take these seminars where I was paying for it, or I was very privileged that my workplace paid for a significant part of that. Now, I definitely don't do that as much anymore, and there's a number of reasons why. Just my life is just different. I can't afford to do something like that, and then the course suck, or I get angry because the way the courses are just different. And that's why I don't even teach that much anymore, because I don't think what people want to learn is really what was available several years ago. But so that was probably always in me. Now, when you say I walked into the NBA, the story is, I was working in minor league basketball as an athletic trainer, and I got that role. There's a convoluted outliers story where like I could tell you it, but it cannot be reproduced. It's just I was in the right place at the right time. And one of the assistant coaches this team was in New Jersey where I grew up, the same one of the counties that I was in. And he was with the New Jersey Nets several years ago, and his name was Clifford Ray. He was 1975 Rookie of the Year in Golden State. And he was an assistant coach for Butch Beard, who was the head coach for the Nets, probably. So now we're talking middle late 90s. And I said, hey, Cliff, was when you were with Coach Butch's staff, is the athletic trainer the same guy? Maybe you can, I kind of like this basketball thing. Because I always was either going to go in football, military, or be a pediatric physical therapist. 20 years later, check. But anyway, he's like, yeah, his name's Teddy. Call him, drop my name, see what happens. Like you have nothing to lose. So I called him. I dropped his name. I believe I called on a Thursday. I went up to East Rutherford, where the Nets were located at that time. I interviewed or kind of met Ted, and Sunday I was in the NBA. As his assistant. Now that year, it probably was more of an intern role where, even though I was never called an intern, because I didn't travel, and I would have to be asked to come up during the year. Now, I went back to the minor league, same team in Central New Jersey. So that would have been now so I was with the team the entire like October, November, but then once the season started, I wasn't around. So in the summer, I got a phone call from one of the ops guys. His name was Ian Rubel. We're driving over the Outer Bridge Crossing, which is the bridge from New Jersey into Long Island, into Staten Island. And, of course, when you're in the minor leagues, and I'm sure it's like this in hockey, when you're staff, like you're driving the van, like they always say, so, oh man, we got, you don't know what it's like. We in the minor leagues, we travel in vans. I'm like, if you're a stud player, you get an entire row of a 15-passenger van. Like I'm driving at 3 a.m. in the morning after being the team mother for the whole thing. And Ian said, hey, John Nash wants to know if you're available to come in tomorrow. We just fired Teddy. I'm like, now I'm literally in the middle of a bridge and I'm driving this 15-passenger van. And I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. What time? And I had to cancel people. I just made a business decision as a 22-year-old. And on my resume, I put interim head athletic trainer because I was the only medical person there as we prepared for the draft that summer, which was the summer of 2000. And a lot of the coaches were still the same. We got a new GM. John Nash was still there, but that's when Rod Thorne took over. And I was still chuckwagon. And when somebody needed something or the phone rang, that was me. Now because it was the off season, there wasn't a lot of doing, but it was more organization. And that was the year the Nets drafted Kenyon Martin, and remember he was coming off a big injury at the University of Cincinnati. So I guess we can talk about it now. He didn't work out. Like he was so out of shape he couldn't even run full court. So there was this big talk, and Rod Thorne was like saying, okay, obviously you guys really don't talk to the media, but let's say the company line is that Kenyon was here, but he didn't work out. And because they were still trying to leverage, do they trade out of that pick or whatever? So obviously Kenyon was fantastic for the Nets for a long time. And I happened to be on the receiving end of that because after I left the Nets, I went to the minor leagues for 3 years. And that was around the same time that now you know it as the G League. But back then it was called the D League. It was called the NBDL, the Development League. And I went to Columbus, Georgia. And I was there. And then that was an entire experience living in the Deep South, which was very interesting. And then got back to the Sixers as the assistant athletic trainer. Now it's full thing. And played the Nets many times and saw a lot of the people that I used to work with when I was with the Sixers. So the first year with the Sixers, I was assistant athletic trainer, and there was no strength and conditioning coach, which at that time wasn't the weirdest thing. The NBA was, I think all sports, probably have different cultural things that if people aren't aware of, they're very shocked. It wasn't that strange a thing to not have a strength coach in the NBA even at that time. And they outsourced to these punks. They're terrible. Like like some local place, like this minor league deal. Like they paid a sponsor, just terrible stuff. Horrible stuff. So I never like crossed any boundaries because look, I'm still in my middle 20s. I'm not trying to, do anything that's going to jeopardize this second chance. Oh my God. Like anyway, I do think the biggest reason was how I look, which I think I'm fair to say that if you eyeball me, you might have a good idea that I know what to do with dumbbells in my hand or whatever. So the players would very, very often, especially on the road, hey, yo, Chuck Wagon, come here and put me through one, which would mean like a workout, because I obviously know what to do in the weight room. I really didn't have a perspective of athletic performance. I knew how to lift and I knew what good form was. And at that point, I was probably not rolling as a competitive powerlifter, but I was climbing the ladder and I was strong. And I was also much heavier then than I am now, which you've seen me, which might be surprising. But yeah, I probably was at 5'0". I've probably been as high as like 215 or 216 around that time. So then the second year, I became the head strength and conditioning coach. So you're asking me about these perhaps watermark time periods. That summer, I dug in and I got exposed to as much athletic development that I possibly could. And I just picked a couple things because I do believe that's how you do it. You just got to pick something. Like, does it look like that model can breed what I want? Yes? Well, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it the exact way that they do it. I'm not going to try to make it my own yet. And I did that. And some of those people that I remember at some of the seminars and books that I read to this day, not because I knew them in 2003, but I call them like my older brothers now. Like it's very special that I was that student listening to them up there, and now people look at me like that, and I look at them the same way that I looked at them. So that kind of put me on the track. Now you do know this, and I don't know if folks listening know, at the professional level, in season, strength and conditioning is not about jumping higher and running faster. It might be about putting on weight for certain people, but it's really not this intense fitness environment. It's using those types of methods to make sure as many players are as close to 100% as often as possible. You're kind of more of this physical therapist that knows how to deal with weights. Ding, 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 ding. and I really started to, after the stuff that I learned that summer, I started to realize that what I could do as a physical therapist from a technique standpoint, I could apply to keep these guys healthy. And it wasn't like we weren't lifting weights. It was that we were doing things, and I had a perspective. I think it's in my DNA as a healthcare provider to keep people healthy. And it was no secret that some of the names that I was following as educators had the same philosophies, because I took everything from them. And we did very well. We did very, very well. So I think I can't believe it's this long, but 05-06, which would have been my third year in Philadelphia, we were number one in games missed, meaning we were the best in the league in terms of injuries. We had the least amount of player games. Now, there's a lot of different ways to look at player games. I don't remember out of that list how many were non-contact or anything, but no one was even close to us. And I also remember that, it's the NBA, so maybe, look, Allen played, and Chris Webber played 78 games out of 82, which was the most he's ever played in his career, tied. I think first or second year he played 78. Oh, well, that must have been a free agent year. No, he still had 2 years, $44 million left on his contract. So whatever we were doing, which a lot of it I had no idea of at the time in terms of creating connections with people. because they obviously had to do what I was asking, there was a lot of things that started to breed some very, very significant confidence. And I am not embarrassed to say that while I have never been given this direct feedback, I'd be an idiot to think that maybe the confidence bothered other people. And maybe that's why I didn't get a new contract after that year. And no one's ever told me that, but we talk about it and be like, well, hey, I must have done something, because I'm 20 something years old. I'm not even getting paid $100,000, which again, if people aren't listening, is that would have been a very normal salary for being in a big city for that role. And I got banged, and they didn't even replace me. They went back to these clowns that were this outsourced, like this minor league deal, like this local place that was just awful. Because it was even less expensive than what I was getting paid. So at that point, I had this thing in my head that I'm not a physical therapist, I'm not a strength coach, but I'm both, but I'm neither. And then I can take my hat forwards and I can turn it backwards. And I came back home and I worked for the hospital that I did one of my residencies during PT school, because they were always trying to get me to come back, because the fellow named Brian Mason, who was the director there, he always had this vision of getting like this annex to the hospital. So I didn't work in the hospital. They gave me like these outreach places where they would cater to athletic people, active people, and I'm like, dude, I can see anybody. They just have to follow the plan. And they would, like, if you walked in, you'd be like, am I in the right place? This looks like a gym. Like, yeah. Or like the kids would say, yeah, like I go to a physical therapy place and it's like physical therapy on steroids. And I started to develop a lot of the messages that are, part of my commercial message, where, if you have a sprained ankle, why can't you do pull-ups and bench press? If you're in a sling, why can't you walk up the treadmill at a very high, it started like, how do we change? How do we engage in fitness and therapy at the same time? And that was during the period where I would still really engage in a lot. So maybe 2 months I'd take therapy course, and then it would be a fitness course, and then it'd be training. And that culminated in, because I was working for a hospital, that's like corporate America, and corporate America is boxed. They like, once you like outgrow the box, it becomes really not a healthy situation. And really what I'm alluding to is that I knew how much revenue I was generating in this very unique product that hospitals or anywhere doesn't have. Where can you go to train 3 times a week with awesome equipment, competent coaching, and use your insurance? Because they figured out a way to do that, and it was completely above board and legal, because physical therapy is injury prevention, it's cardiovascular fitness, it's all these things. Anyway, they wouldn't pay me more, so I started looking. Now, during that period of time, I always thought it was going to be going back to the NBA, and I don't think anybody would have thought that 3 years later I wouldn't be in the NBA. It's now 13 years later, and I'm not back in the NBA, which is okay. And I've consulted for dozens of teams, and I'd probably have to take a significant pay cut to go back to the NBA. But that's when I kind of kept the radar up for whatever the next cool thing, because I don't think I was at an age yet, nor was I at a stage in my life where my job didn't define me. I still was incomplete as a person if I didn't have a job that was cool in the eyes of others. I wasn't there yet. I wasn't there. And looking back, like, the story is probably really cool and maybe even motivating. But for me, I still needed, on my logo, I needed something that says I'm validated. And that job became something, what was the fucking title? Something, director of physical something with the United States Marine Corps Special Operations Command. All right, that sounds pretty cool.
Sounds badass.
It was. Look, every minute that goes by, it became today. 10 years later, it becomes a better experience. But when I was there, it wasn't what I had signed up for. There was so many great things. I don't think, you can't really see the way the camera is, but I left I left there with something, and I can maybe turn the camera if you think it's cool, but it was not a good experience from a social level. They didn't want me. I got very, very close to the commanding general, which is not a good thing, because then you're like, it'd be like if you were boys with the head coach. Like anything you do, people have their eyes on you.
Yeah, we know those.
And I didn't do it intentionally. I wasn't like kissing his ass. It was because it was his program. He had coached at Penn State football many years ago. This was his idea, to have these civilians come in that had a lot of pedigree. Here's the problem. I was the only one that had professional sports experience. And there was only one other individual that had worked in Division I. These were just random people, because after he commissioned the program, things people just did whatever they wanted to do, because I'm a Marine. Like, I don't need some, civilian coming in and telling me what to do. And nobody told me that, because I never would have accepted the role. And one day when, let's just say I took a mental health day, when I walked out, my desk had a fist mark in it, because I said, man, I wish somebody would have told me this before I moved halfway across the country. But as I was alluding to before, it finished okay, because there was significant people that I still communicate with today, incredible men and women, and I left with what is called a tip of the spear award, which I'm pretty sure a lot of civilians don't get. And let me see if I. There you go.
Do whatever you want. There you go.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's not a real. Yeah. So in special operations, the tip of the spear. That's the one that's kind of the mantra, that if you're at that level, that's where you are. And there was one conversation that because I looked at the general as a mentor, and it hurts me so much that he won't talk to me. And it's probably, because I don't know why. There's, people, they ask these corny questions like, who would you want to have dinner with? Major General Paul Lefevre. He owes me a chat because he left me. He said, don't worry, it's my decision. I run all this. And he told me once that, Charlie, the problem is that you look like us, you act like us, you talk like us, but you're not one of us. And I wanted to be like, why did you bring me here? Like, why did you, what? And it's because in the Marine Corps, there's so many layers. One of the words, and I'm sure it's used in sports, is like, you're in the weeds. That comes from the military, in certain destinations, where the guys that are at the front line are crawling in the weeds to use the weeds as cover. And even though he wanted it, I'm following instructions. I'm trying to build something. And they just didn't want it. Now, that was why it sucked during. And look, there's a whole lot of more specifics that aren't important. What is most important is that I am such a better human being, because after that, I didn't need validation anymore to have a really cool job. I didn't need to be at MARSOC to have a badass job. I didn't need to work in sport. I'll tell you this, and I think we did have this conversation. I think I was gone from MARSOC for a month. Nah, it was 2 months, because if it was 1 month, I would have 2 cups. I would have 2 of those things that all you guys it is your dream to hold that thing and walk around, skate around the rink. I got a phone call, because remember, I was in Philly, and the Flyers and the Sixers were very, very close in terms of, their pyramidal. They were owned by the same system, Comcast. And all those dudes from the Flyers, as you know, I think they probably still are, is the front office at the LA Kings.
Yep.
And I was working in Boston teaching a seminar, and whoever the GM was, it wasn't Hextall, it was somebody else. I don't remember his name. I'm sure if you rattle him off, it'll be like, yeah, it was him. He's like, well, yeah, exactly. Which he said, because they were stuck. They didn't have a strength coach. We went through some things. I had a couple people that were NHL strength coaches that I used as references, and we came to a number. And he's like, well, can you? And the truth is, he did remind me that I would have become the highest paid strength coach in the NHL, and I'm like, okay, like, all right, well, whatever. You're living in LA. It wasn't like LA, like you can be comfortable, even at a very significant number that I don't want to even say, so people don't feel uncomfortable or at all disrespected. I was in Boston, and on a Sunday, he's like, well, can we divert your flight? Can you come out here right now? And I'm like, versus, remember, I'm on the Outer Bridge crossing thinking of like something very, very similar is happening. I'm like, all right, this is it. But I had some things that started to turn over at that point, even 1 month, where I started to work in New York City. I started to get on a teaching circuit. I started to have this new life, and I turned it down. It turns out, as I alluded to before, several other really, really good people turned it down until the fellow who is there now, who I believe is a very, very competent coach, he got 2 Stanley Cups. 2. Not 1, 2. And I think he there was a lot of, I know, I'm not going to say how many, because I do know the answer, but I know I was asked by Dean Lombardi, can we bring you out here right now? He asked me, can you still skate? Because I played hockey. Yeah, I played hockey in high school. I was a much better baseball player. And that was another watershed where I got a chance to get that logo again, and I didn't take it. And now I'm able to do things. I've consulted for, every in English Premier League even. We talk about before we went on, unless we were live and you didn't tell me, talking about China.
We wouldn't pull that on you.
Yeah, no. Hey, sometimes that's the best stuff when you do these podcasts. I got every logo there is now, and I have an annual pass for Disney, and I live with my beautiful wife. Like I have so much because I got. Yeah, I don't know who's listening. I don't want to say bad words. I had so much disappointment in the past. And when people say that, oh, don't worry, everything happens for a reason, or don't worry, like things will work out. The thing is that they're right. It does. Now, they leave out the part that it sucks while it's happening. And they leave out the part that you have no idea how long that suctitude lasts until the next cool thing happens.
You don't get access to that information.
No, and obviously it's different for everybody. But the reality is, you asked for some of those watershed remarks, and there clearly was a clinical piece, but it was the confidence that I started to grow in the MBA and this methodology that a lot of people like to think they do. I don't know. I'm on some different shit. Put it that way. I can't explain it sometimes. It doesn't make me better. Remember the Vince McMahon line? I am better than no man. I just don't know a lot of people. One of the flattering comments is like, Charlie, there's very few conversations that you can't be at the table. And I'm like, well, I could probably think of some, but I'm very thankful for that. Some of those things. Or Charlie, you have more peripheral vision, than a lot of other people in our profession. And all of that started when I was in Philly, where I worked for like 4 coaches, but Kevin Johnson was the head athletic trainer. So remember, I was his assistant before I was a strength coach. The leash that he gave me, and I'll also say, I left, man. He didn't keep me there. Like he could have done something, and I don't mind saying that because we're men. And I know he saw me speak for the first time, and I was so glad. You see, I'm even gonna get emotional. He came to a conference. I had no idea he was going to be there. And I went up to him and I gave him his hug. And it's like, dude, I'm so thankful you're here. Like, and when you look at all these terrible disappointments that I had, and I'm the kid with the silver spoon in my mouth. I'm in the NBA at 22, head athletic trainer at 23, and Marine Corps, blah, blah, blah. To be able to not require those things, to have a fulfilled life. And then things have just, I still have some huge disappointments since then, but I'm cool with it because like I kind of know, and I kind of feel like, yes, that wall better move because I'm going right through it because I can get angry very, very quickly, but I know that the other side is going to be okay because it's happened enough. Like, it's okay. So those were some watershed things that that I think in the timeline of my career that both clinically but also very socially crucial to me.
Kudos to you because I relate so closely to It's almost like you have this hunger for professional competence. You have this hunger for education. In my line of work, it's athletic growth and career advancement. And there's this discussion, I maybe in society at large about what is happiness, what is fulfillment, what is hunger, and I think that it's been really cool to hear you explain your relationship with your inner fire and how it's both been the fuel that has, allowed for your ongoing education, has allowed for you to continue to push past these disappointing moments in your career. And now you're at a place where it sounds like you're cool with the downside of that which is you're going to be disappointed sometimes when, things don't go your way because you are so motivated, because you are so education forward, because you are so growth minded.
Yeah, I think that's true. But what I've also been mentored to build is a parachute, and so when you do fall, the bigger your parachute, or like right now we talk about those of us that do work for ourselves in this time period where you can't make people buy your product whether it's allowed or not. You have a runway, meaning you save money or you have other opportunities to do things. And when you have the right parachute, you can only do that when you make lists of the things that are important to you. And it's not only my motivation to be the best, but rather also that I have, when I say I save for a rainy day, I don't mean just save money. I mean, like, you save emotion, for a rainy day, so that when it does rain, you don't get gloomy. And that has the only way to do that. Now, functionally, you have to kind of enumerate, and I actually have a model to help people enumerate those things. It's called the 151-in-1 rule. But you have to fail in order to be motivated to get into something like that. In terms of if you never fail, like, how do you change? And that's when you look at people that work in our profession for the team for a long time, guys that have 20, 30, 40 years experience at the team level, and then they get whacked, and then they get sacked, and they have nothing. Because the logo was everything to them, and they were never, they never did anything to build a parachute. And we know people like this. And sometimes they're dinosaurs as coaches and trainers. Like, they never grow. Like, they never learn new things. Like, wow, I need to learn new things. Oh, he's a great guy. He's a great guy. Well, sometimes being a great guy isn't enough when the coach comes in and brings your own guy. So you have to fail. And if you don't fail, you're never compelled to build that social parachute. And I'm very proud to. And then I've also modeled it to try to help others. I'm not nearly as vocal and prolific at communicating that social stuff because I'm just some dude. I probably can talk about training and rehab, and I got a little bit of cachet, but I don't always talk about the other stuff because I guess I'm not as confident in that because it's more like what makes him so special. Well, I failed a lot. And I talk about my failures. Now, I didn't talk about every single failure in our talk here, but I'm very open about my failures. And I think when you listen to people that are supposed to have this self-help or motivating message, I would ask you to consider how many of them tell you how they failed. I love listening to Gary Vee. I love people that yell and scream.
I love Gary Vee.
I'm a wrestler. I love the yelling thing. I love the energy. How many times has Gary Vee told you a story about how he failed? 0. If people now, I don't know that he hasn't failed, but I don't know what it is. I don't know how he failed. But if somebody never fails, all they're doing is telling you they're winning lottery numbers. There's nothing to learn. There's nothing to learn from somebody who never fails. So I use that as an example because I don't think have you ever heard him talk about failures? No, he always talks about what you should do.
No, I'm trying to get him on the podcast so I can get him.
Well, ask him. Tell him I called him out. Tell him I called him out. I think
I'll send it to him.
Yeah, like what? No, I don't want. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me anything about what I should do. Tell me how you failed, and tell me how you cultivated those awesome, powerful, brilliant messages, because I don't question the brilliance in the message. I question how you got there, unless you can talk about your failures with just as much alacrity and just as much confidence as you talk about your successes. So that's the that to me I'm proud of.
Let's get into that, because I think you could tell you're such a man of intense value. Every time we've worked together, I've left, very clear how focused, Charlie Weingroff is in his work. You could tell there's a deep sense of care. You really are ambitious to help me help my team. It's something that, we've talked about. What is this 151 in one rule? Because I want to know.
Oh, okay.
What more about that?
Yeah, so there's always a backstory, and I've always been coached, tell stories. I had an awful interview for a director position, and I talked to somebody who I don't want to say, because I don't know that they want to be a part of my message, and I'm like, how do you because he wasn't surprised that I got revved up and probably presented myself in a very negative way. And he's like, I don't get upset at those things, because I just feel, and this is him talking, I want nothing and I need nothing. And he was obviously very schooled and influenced by the traditional Zen model, which is I want nothing and I need nothing. That's the pursuit of whatever Zen form of happiness or growth. And I kind of kept that in my head, because that's not, it's not how I felt at that moment. But I was talking to him as a friend and as a mentor to help me not be so mad at this ridiculously disgraceful interview. One of the most unprofessional things the organization interviewed many people, and they recorded, which you gave them permission to record it, and then they already knew who they want. It turned out that they already knew who they wanted to hire, and because he was a doofus, they showed him every interview of all the people that they had considered finalists. I'm like, how? That's all true. Now I'm not gonna say who it is,
wow,
because but that's all very, very true. And I didn't know that at the time, but it was just awful. So remember, want nothing and need nothing. Then another time, I was sitting up on a board, you're all not a board, like a Q&A with all the speakers at a conference, and somebody asked, like, how do you guys balance all of your travel and family and whatever? And one of the fellows gave his algorithm, and he said the first thing he does when in the new year is that he blocks out all the dates, and he pauses because he's a brilliant speaker. And he's like, that I'm going to do things with my family. He blocks out, you thought he was going to say he blocked out like all of his most important seminars or his most important speaking engagements. No, he blocked out all the stuff that he does with his family so that he can't book over it, because those are the most important things. And he goes, then there's priorities that are scaled, and then he fills out his yearly calendar. I'm like, all right, that's interesting, because that's an algorithm, and I'm a machine. Like I think in very logical, mechanical terms, which can be very painful sometimes, because the world is not logical and mechanical. So
it's not as black and white out there.
So now you have this algorithm.
I love it.
And you have want nothing and need nothing. Okay. So I started to think of, when I had some things socially click over for me, I felt like, remember I said it was the first time I didn't need to be in the NBA. I didn't need to have this amazing job. So I put need at the top of the column. Because remember, like, I need nothing. Then in the second column, I put want, because like if you want nothing, you'll be good. And then in the third column, I didn't have anything at that point. And it turns out that the top of the third column is nice to have. Okay? So now above the word need is 100. And I have a PowerPoint, and if you want to, it's just a slide. It's nothing, miraculous. But I give it to people and they can, type it in. 100 goes over the word need. 51 goes over the word want, and 1 goes over the words nice to have. So now we need some definitions. If something you need, life will be dramatically different in 7, 14, 21, or 30 days. So that sounds a little bit about financial, but it's also about family. You know, it's about like if you lost a family member, your life is dramatically different immediately. That's what a need is. If this thing is not in your possession, life is dramatically different in these very, very crucial time periods. Something that you want, it may have the same amount of desire as a loved one, but it's not that important. It's something that is so crucial to who you are, but if it wasn't there, life would not be over.
Sounds like power play time for me.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Yeah, like if you okay, you know, you could put it. We could do it. We could workshop it like that if when we're through.
We'll have to set that up. Yeah, I'd love you to walk me through.
So if you want something, it's very, very important to you, but life isn't over. Here's the thing: if you want it, it cannot be replaced with anything else. It is so special to you. It won't dramatically change your life, but it cannot be replaced with something else. I can, for people that are familiar with me, because I'm very, my juvenile behaviors, those two things, I can tell, we already talked about them. One is Disney and one is wrestling. If I never see wrestling again, if I never go to Disney again, it's no big deal. Like my life will be fine. But there is nothing in my life that I can think of that if I could replace that with, or what the enjoyment and what the release, etc., that those two things bring for me. Now you have nice to have, the one column. The nice to haves, it is just as intense as you desire this thing or this relationship or whatever it is. Except these can be replaced with something else. Okay? The need is 100%. You have to have a need. In your have column, it cannot be replaced with something else, but your life's not over. Nice to have is it can be replaced with something else, and your life's not over. So every day, like I have a whiteboard, and a lot of people that follow this or they keep it on their computer. Every day you look at these lists and you write down what you think should fall into these different columns. Because I'm going to suggest that you can get to a good place. You can get closer to a good place. I don't think anybody can ever get there. I'm not there. You need 100% of your need column. If you don't have 100% of everything that's in that column, you got no shot. No shot. 51% proverbial of all the things in the second column, and 1% of the third column. And now it's a hell of a lot easier to need less things. So if you don't need a lot, it's easier to get 100%. If you don't want a lot, it's easier to get 51%. And it's easy to get 1% of anything. And now you go back to that conversation I had with my friend about the interview, where the goal is to grow through life and take things in the need column and put them into wants. Take things in your want column and put them into nice to have. And life changes, and it might flip-flop, and you go through bad times because you're not in possession of all your needs. You're not in possession of 51% of your wants. Most people have, based on these definitions, most people have way more than 1% of their nice to haves because they're not there yet in appreciating what is the most important things in their life. And again, I can only tell you my opinion that the only way to get there is by failure. But now just do it. Like it's a lot of folks that have tried this find that it's very, very helpful. Now you can put different words. I don't care. You can put different numbers. I'm not selling it like for money, but I'm trying to just sell it and put it out there as something that I think can help people. But if you don't have everything in that first list, you got no shot. And think about it. Like if you don't have enough money to pay rent, like your life is effed. And if you have nothing that you enjoy, you're not there. You're missing something. You're incomplete. To be complete, you need 151 and 1. And I think if you can shift things and find things that you used to really need, man, I cannot live without this thing. Well, maybe now you can live without it. It's easier to achieve 151 and 1. And it was those two stories that kind of put that in my head. And like, if you don't need a lot of things, I started traveling, living in all these different places. I mean, internet, a gym, like you don't need a lot. I didn't need to make a lot of money because I was single and things were cool. Like, that you start to look back and like, wow, like some of the best times is because you lived a simple life. But there's a way to simplify your life, but no simpler, because 51%, if there's a lot of things that you need for recreation, or for things that are important to you, then you got to work for them and make sure they're there. And then a kid comes and everything probably changes. Or a major catastrophe happens, you lose your job or whatever, everything changes. So this is always in flux. But I think it can ground you into really reorganizing the priorities that can fulfill you. I don't like the word happiness. I actually use the word safety. If you're safe, you can be happy. Safe is, and that comes out of a book called Say Anything by an author named Crandall, Crandall, where the goal is not to be happy. The goal is to be safe, because happy can be fleeting. You don't ever want to lose safety. You always want to be safe. So that I use that word instead of happy. So.
Yeah, I really appreciate that formula for, like conscious reframing. We're sold a lot as consumers, where attention is everywhere in the modern day, whether it's on our phone or, whatever's on TV. And I think, in my life, discipline has been a great source of freedom. If I do not schedule ahead, very similar to the talk you're speaking about, where if I am not, like what is important to me has to be in my calendar. Like you can tell what's important to somebody based on what they're spending money on and what they're spending time on. Like show me your calendar and show me your bank account. And, for me, as long as I am, conscious about how I want to live my life. And I think I'm at a point now, I'm 26. I've been married for a couple of years. We have a dog. I'm trying to ascend in the NHL. There's this big goal here. I definitely put that in the want category. Like I don't think I'll die if I leave the NHL, but it certainly is something that is so in the forefront. It's a big carrot that I get up every day and try and chase. But I think it's interesting we were talking about safety, because I was just listening. I just had Dr. Stephanie Esteem on. She's a functional chiro out of Toronto. She's got this awesome podcast, Better. It's more so, her audience is more women, but she was having this podcast with Jennifer Kalari, who's like a parenting expert. Well, something I like to do is try to go into spaces that I know nothing about. I don't have kids. So I was trying to listen to this, parenting expert about some things that I can learn about just in my day to day. And she had this comment, Jennifer did, about how there's really, in her opinion, she has a psychology degree and was a, social worker for a long time. There's fear and there's love as a person. And I think it's interesting how you use this word safety instead of happiness. When I worked with you, just in a professional setting, I felt you were trying to help me do what I love and prevent any fear of getting injured. Like you were both a pain preventer and a dream facilitator. So it's interesting to hear your backstory and how you orchestrate both your personal life. And I wanted to get into Disney and wrestling and some of the more fun stuff, because, our relationship started with, our obsession for high performance, and you were going to help me along with that goal. And I was excited to work with you. But, as I've gotten to know you a little bit, I'm very interested in your continuing well-roundedness as a person. You were talking about like an emotional parachute. That's something that earlier in my life, and I'm only 26, so I'm going to cut myself some slack, but I'm not sure I always had that. I'm not sure I always built like a strong emotional base where I was really conscientious about my need, want, nice to have. I think there were a lot of times in my life where I felt like everything was in the need.
Yeah. That's the whole idea. Yeah, that's the whole idea where this endeavor, this chase, is to move things to the right on the whiteboard. You always want to move over to the right. Like that's because again, it's easier to get 100% of less things. And the other thing, Connor, is there'll be times where you have the parachute and then you lose it.
Yeah. Because
things are just not always in our control, no matter how mechanically oriented we are. It's not possible. I just told you, I figure it. I remember KJ came downstairs once and he told me, like, he was telling GM that, like, Charlie's gonna be the next great young strength coach in the NBA. Like I got dubbed, with a sword on my shoulder. Did everything we're supposed to do, and still didn't get back. And I didn't have that emotional parachute then. And now I do, and maybe next year I won't have it again because something happens that really challenges my needs. So it's okay to go up and down. It's just that if you know, that's why you got to look at it all the time, because I do think the needs, wants, and nice to haves will change because life events, whether they're good or bad, nothing's bad, but desirable
or failure,
desirable or temporarily undesirable. They motivate you to change. Maybe you went from 151-1, something really, really good happened, and you're not there anymore because financially this new addition to the family, we didn't budget properly to provide in the way that we want to. And I think about that because it's not on the way, but it's a big discussion, and we don't have a whole lot of time left. But that's it'll go up and down. So the thing that you're 26, that now I will say, the sooner, if you're a pragmatic person, and I know you enough to say that you probably are. And being pragmatic doesn't mean you're not emotional. It means, like, the sooner you can put this stuff into play. Like, I knew what I wanted to do. I had no idea I'd be doing what I'm doing now, but at an early age, I knew exactly where I wanted to be. I'll tell you right now, it was University of Virginia, because I had the best PhD program in athletic training. Like, I knew. Now, not everybody at a certain age knows where they want to go, but if you don't know where you're going, you can't plot out the best map. Your Google navigation doesn't work unless you put an address in there. So the more specific and the more proper you can be with that 151-1 document or whiteboard, the better. The better. Like, it's your coach. It's your reminder. It's
a beautiful framework. What's in your need? What's in your need column right now?
I grew up on the East Coast, and when you grow up on the East Coast, and you have a family of Eastern European background, money is a big deal. And usually, if you grow up on the East Coast, and I'm older than you, but relatively similar generation, it is you know people that lived through war, and you know people that maybe even lived through the Depression. People look at money when you have that ethnic, your grandparents, like that lived through these periods of time. Money is something very. And for people that know me, I'm very, very lucky. Like, I don't have to pay for a lot of these clothes. And I don't dress like real special. I have a $22,000 car. I spend a lot of money on Disney. But
I love it. I love that you're this big bad, like, 800-pound squatting dude usually with a mohawk.
Yeah, I still
I was joking. We were trying to schedule. Yeah, that's awesome.
But money is on the checklist. It's like if your mom or your grandmother would be telling their friends when they're gossiping that, oh, my son is so successful, he makes this much money. Like, that's kind of that's a very East Coast thing. When you come from these Eastern European background, these were the immigrants. These are people that had no money. So you get brought up. So I'm not okay if anybody says I'm cheap. Okay, I'm not cheap at all. Like, look, I don't know what you're looking at behind me, but some of those little toys cost a lot of money. But there's, in my need column, like I feel safe when, a car needs new brakes and it's no big deal. Or we're at a time like this where my revenue is significantly changed. Everything's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be cool. That's in my need. To be able to provide not only financial, but to provide everything that I need to provide for my wife and my parents. That is a need. My life will be, if I feel like I am letting them down, or if I feel like I cannot deliver something that is reasonable of any type, I'm effed up. I'm jacked up. I don't feel safe that way. Those two things are the most important. Obviously, if and when we have a child, that will then have, because then those things will change, because then you add a person into what you need to give, and those things. So I've also been very, very coached as a business person since leaving the Marine Corps, that like we shouldn't be embarrassed to talk about money. Like I feel like I'm trying to audit myself. Like, am I talking too much about money? Well, now you see why. Because it is very, very important to me. Not because I want to buy the 85% of my Nike clothes I would never pay that much for. But I still got like 6 or 7 it's still in the box. I would never pay $220 for a pair of Nikes. I'd go figure out where the outlet store is and get as many size 7s and 7.5s that they have for $60 or under. But yeah, those are in my needs. My wants, I mentioned Disney and wrestling, and there's obviously other things. Nice to haves, like a really big time house. Like I'm not a home. I want to be able to go into my backyard and feel like I'm not in my house anymore. I had a house like that in New Jersey, but it wasn't all that, but a Rezvani tank. I don't know if any of your boys have one of those yet. That's a $400,000 SUV. I'm pretty sure that can. I'm pretty sure that can.
Literally saying you want a tank outside in your backyard. I'm like, you.
No, so here, like, I'm sure their Instagram is about to get a whole bunch of followers. It's ridiculous. Now the $400,000 model has a smoke screen and an oil slick, and it's bulletproof to no end. I'm not sure I need that model, but now look, a lot of times when I work for players in pro sport, part of the deal, I know one of my most successful guys. Part of our deal is like, you come in, you get your key into the house, take whatever car you want, you break it, you buy it. So I try to stay like $200,000 and below, so I don't drive. But
it's awesome.
That's the nice to haves is like all sorts of stuff. It'd be nice to not only work when you want to, rather than have to motivate for these other things. So, but and if you guys want to post like a download, I'll just give it to you. It's not like it's fun, because the other thing too is like if you use the PowerPoint or if you do the whiteboard, I'd ask you to use certain colors, and it says it in the PowerPoint what color. Now I can't tell you what color, but remember, you want the need list to be as small as possible, right? Because if you don't have a lot of things, it's easier to get to 100. You use the color you hate. Like what is your most hated color? We joke around if we talk about this at a seminar, like, all right, burnt sienna from the old Crayola box or whatever. Because if it's an ugly color, you don't want to look at it, and you'll be mentally, psychologically driven to get rid of those things, because in the middle column is your favorite color. Your favorite color, because you want it to be there, and the last column is not your favorite color, but a color that you kind of like, so that you're psychologically motivated to fill them properly. So I'll email that to you guys when we're through. Yeah. So,
I'd like to check that out. Yeah, money is one of those weird things. I've spent an interesting amount of time thinking about it. I guess as a young athlete, kind of came into money, wasn't supposed to sign with it as a Washington Capital, ended up with a contract like 3 or 4 days prior to the regular season. And now, I guess as a professional athlete, I feel like this. When I was a kid, I always had this perspective. I was always training towards something that was 5-10 years down the road. I wanted to make the Team USA National Team Development Program, and then I wanted to get drafted, and then I wanted to play in the NHL. But now my focus is more on the day-to-day. Just because that's how you stay in the league for 10 years is you just worry about tomorrow. You just play well tomorrow, and then after that you'll figure it out. And we've been on this weird, quarantine with COVID, and the NHL is totally on pause. It's been this interesting thing that, I've tried to think about. I'm fortunate enough. I have another year on my deal, so I'll be cool through next year. But it is something that, from time to time, just from a personal security standpoint, like I know I have a mortgage in Chicago, so I owe somebody money for 20 years, and I don't have a source of income that I know of for the next 20 years. So I've kind of tried to treat this from a personal standpoint as an opportunity to bulletproof myself in a way that, what do I want to do after my career? What if this were to go on forever? Who's to say there's not, a secondary outbreak or whatever? Now I'm imagining a little bit, but it's been, in that chaos has been very growthful for me. Like I've been able to try and really consider some stresses, really consider some dreams moving forward, and trying to, think out ahead and how to, plan my life. Because I had such clarity for so long. Like I that's how I introduced myself. In 8th grade, I stood up. I was in this, special math class, this advanced math class with Mrs. Bennett. She's actually reminded me of the story. I've seen her and her son around the gym that I train at out of Chicago. And she'll remind me every time I see her, remember what you said in 8th grade? And I said, I stood up. I said, hi, everyone. I'm Connor. I have 2 younger brothers. Their names are Blake and Hunter. I am going to play for Team USA someday, get a scholarship to Michigan, and I'm going to play in the NHL. And I sat down. And now, as an athlete, you died as an athlete. You kind of have 2 funerals in your lifetime. That day eventually will come. And I just don't like knowing there's a test coming that I'm not prepared for. So I'm in this weird space where how can I, how intense the pro athlete career is. Like it's a 24-hour job. It's a, 365 day, you're on the job. And I'm trying to balance, how can I focus wholeheartedly and leave nothing on the table, very much like that Jordan-esque, mentality. You think Jordan was thinking about a podcast when he was playing, right? And that's kind of been the old school, sport mentality with great success and for, good reason, I think. But it's been an interesting, thought experiment of, okay, what skills can I continue to acquire? What value can I bring to the world that would, allow for financial security down the road that's outside of the sport of hockey? Maybe you coach, maybe you manage, fine. Those would be things I'm sure at the time, down the road, I may or may not be very excited about. But what if I'm not? I want to have some concept of options. I don't think you always figure out plan B. Like I'm not totally like a plan B guy. I'm more so always focused on trying how to make plan A work. But at least like trying to dream up like plan A2,
I'd love to be able to say that plan A doesn't become plan B, because plan A, especially if it's unexpected that plan A doesn't work anymore, then it becomes B, C, D, and E, and that goes back to the failure piece. And in cases like yours, man, if the easier you can establish your version with your words of 151-1, you'll start to see, I think, that you won't be as anxious. You can think about it, but you won't be anxious. And I'll be anxious for you because that's who I am. But I mean, it's like you don't know what it is. Okay, it's easy to say, all right, be smart, invest. Don't buy jewelry, or whatever. Where we see this in a lot of situations of anybody who comes into money, not just sports. Mm-hmm. But again, if you like a lot of times, and we do this, all of this really comes out of Canada basketball, where Sam and I mentor, our staff. And I'm like, what? The further out you can see, is like plugging in the address into Google Maps. So when you're all done and you're 65, like, what do you want to do? Like, literally, where do you want to live? How many children do you think you want? You can always change it. But if you say it now, you can plot the direction. And then whatever bounty of blessings or resources you have at the moment, you can partition those resources to get to that place. And like, where do you want to live? How many houses do you want? How many do you want to travel? What do you? I know. I remember when I had one of these conversations with a mentor. I said, I want to be one of those parents that's there every Saturday in the big house watching my kid play linebacker with that sweatshirt on, like that sweatshirt you can only get, at that university. And well, not only does that cost money, it costs resources like planning and like, do I really want to have a camper like them? No, I don't want a camper. I'll get there some other way. But I think the sooner anyone can focus, just like when, you don't have to tell me as an athlete when you come to work with me on the first day, you don't have to tell me these specifics, but I know, enough about sport that, okay, this person, here's our gaps, and this is the space that we're going to look at, and we fill them in. Like, we just fill in those gaps, because I believe if those gaps were missing and they were not there, then you'd be a more elite level player or be who you are more often. So that's the address. That's what you type in. Like, okay, well, I think if Connor's hip does this, he can be some version of more desirable athlete. So the sooner we can come to that address that you plug in, it becomes a much more simple process. Simple isn't always easy, but it's simple. And that's like what do you want to do when you're 55? What do you want to do when you're 60? When you talk about people have a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, like, just do it. The cool part is, like, you can just rip it up tomorrow if things change. And that's I think that's part of how I feel about that type of functional, because if you put the word functional in front of something, it makes it positive. Functional anxiety and functional
works for you instead of against you.
Yeah. So
here we gotta hit it, but so we covered. You're clearly, and I know this from personal experience, but I'm trying to share this with the audience. Like, you are a great elite physical therapist. We'll go with that for simplicity's sake. It's a term. I'm going to sell you short. I'm going to sell you short. Forgive me.
I don't suck.
No, I wrote down gap analyzer. I know I was listening to another podcast with Derek Hansen and Don Saladino that you were on. I think that was, bang on. You're a Rubik's cuber. You want to find, what's going on in the sport performance realm. You're very good at that as a consultant. You're definitely a man of tremendous value, and that's what we just talked about the last 40 minutes or whatever. And that to me is the stuff. That was awesome to talk about. But I gotta know where does the Disney and the wrestling fit into your life, and you lit up just now.
All right, so you spared me the powerlifting part, because people always want to talk about that. All right, so Disney has two components. One is the easy way, and the other one is more fits into this other stuff that we talked about. The easy part is, like, there's very few places that you can go and just act like however. Like, you can, and I'm not talking about, like, getting drunk at a club and do it. You can go to Disney and, like, nobody gets judged. There's very little of the, like, legitimate safety issues. Like, people just smile and wave and everybody's nice to a degree, and it's just, you get to act like a kid, and I don't get judged because now I've kind of made that my gimmick, and by having big shoulders, you kind of get away with it too. But I'm very juvenile and I'm silly, and some people think I'm funny. I don't know. Like, see, look, you laugh, so I must be funny.
You got one. Blind squirrel.
At Disney, you can be like that and nobody cares, and it's like that's how you're supposed to act. You can make funny faces at the camera and the roller coaster and blah blah blah. Okay, so that's the one everybody would kind of, okay, again. Here's the other one. I have studied and I learned. I first started to see this years ago. I think it's actually still on Netflix. Look up Masters of the Universe, like as in He-Man. Okay, He-Man is the cartoon, the toy from the 80s. And what it's really about is adults like me that collect toys. And like, so you see how that kind of segues from Disney. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have a lot of Disney stuff behind me, and some of it is really cool to me. And they talked about like the essence of hobbies. So like, that's my hobby. Disney is my hobby. Well, what is a hobby? Like, you collect things. Well, yes, I collect mugs and I have some things, but like at Disney, you collect experiences. Like the way for Disney parks, it's not just the movies. So there are so many different things that you can do and go to and eat. And of those things, some are only available at this place. Some is only available like, you know, the special Valentine's Day cupcake that you can only get from February 10th till February 20th. And you collect these experiences. And then you have the opportunity to talk to other people in this incredibly safe environment. Because that's what a hobby is. Like, y'all collect cars. You know, so why do you collect cars? So you can talk to other people about your 1957, you know, hot rod car. Like, you know, so it has this one thing that makes you enjoy it to begin with. And so like I'll say, because of course a lot of people, and it's not unfair, they just never been to Disney, they don't get it, which is okay, you don't have to get it because it's not that important, but they're like, yeah, like, why do you, Disney's for kids? Like, okay, that's ridiculous. Like, there's many things to do there that are for adults. But once if the person's really not a piece of garbage and they're trying to hurt you, they just don't get it. If you try to explain to them about collecting experiences, like, oh wow, never really thought of it. It's it's collecting experiences. That's the hobby. Because there's so like, I'm not sure it'll be possible because Disney always changes. So like, you have to get on that ride one more time before it goes down, or that restaurant's closing, so you have to eat there one more time, or have you ever had that ice cream sandwich at that place? And those types of conversations for me, because it makes me feel good because I can act the way I want to act. And not everybody is juvenile. Like, it's fine. Like, they're like, dude, that's not me. I know that's why you don't like it, and I do. We can talk about a different topic. So those are the two things. It's easy to understand that you get to act the way you want to act, but it's also about like the essence of a hobby. But we're collecting experiences, not collecting like these tangible things like you see behind me.
I love that because it seems that your love for Disney is you're engaging in this infinite game. There is no end. There is no checking of the Disney box. And you also professionally are trying to solve the human body. And it's like another infinite game. Similar. So that's pretty cool to, you know, I hope this podcast helps elevate you to some point, get you in front of somebody. And you don't need me. Your brand is you are who you are, and I know how special you are, but Disney should pay you as an adult consultant, right? Because you don't have to sell Disney to kids, right? And kids aren't the ones, you know, booking the trips. So at the end of the day, it's not, you know, 12-year-old Jimmy's credit card, you know, booking the Disney trip. But parents, I don't know, like, I think it's cool talking with, you know, someone like you at your age where, like, physically, you know, you're a monster, you know, you're in great shape, you're in great health. You and your Allie, I follow both on like Instagram, and that you eat very healthy. I'm going to talk to her about this special cupcake because I'm not sure that's on the macros. But
that's a whole nother topic about, I go off the diet a little bit at Disney, and she doesn't do it. And I'm like, it makes me mad because she doesn't enjoy like you can enjoy food once in a while.
They really should pay you because that's like maybe I'm an easy sell, but like that's why
they're doing okay. They're doing okay.
Yeah,
I think
that's a good point. I don't think they're you know really looking for. Yeah, that's a good point. That's kind of why I'm into like coffee so much. Was like, you know, when the sommelier, I don't know if you're a wine drinker, but the sommelier comes over And
I know what it is.
You know, at a fancy schmancy, restaurant, whatever. And they tell you all about this wine. This wine, this is the vineyard, and this is how old it is, and it came from here, and this is why it's going to taste like this, because there were these roots that were next door, and there was this farm, and it was at this altitude. And I'm like, I don't care what you're selling me at this point. I want it. I love the story. And so for me, coffee is like it's got the same story as wine, and it's like cheaper, and you can drink it as an athlete all the time. But you can't wake up at 8 a.m. before practice, and so I love a good story, and I love being sold. So it's interesting. I love hearing about why you're excited about Disney. It's awesome.
Like if it was like a coffee festival or a wine, like it did happen at a wine festival. You just go up to the booth and they give you like a sample or whatever, and be like, all right, come on, what do you got? Give me your spiel. Go. And then go.
I love being sold. I love the spiel. I love the placebo. Yeah. Don't not give me that. That's awesome.
Except when it comes to wine, I don't really care.
Well, I'll
just drink it.
Exactly. That's awesome.
And then you want to hear about wrestling. So
gotta hear about wrestling.
I don't remember what got me into it. I mean, look, if you're 7-8 years old and you see these like gigantic superheroes and they all had characters, like I don't remember, like I don't think just like Disney, people look at wrestling very juvenile. But then like it became very simple. It became something I looked forward to every week, or like the pay-per-view is every month. And you've alluded to, I worked in some cool places, and actually the biggest regret of my life is not trying to become a professional wrestler. My life was being competed with, being in the NBA and et cetera. But I went to PT school with a WWE guy. His real name is Chris Ford. If anybody follow wrestling, he got okay. He was his main characters was a character named Devin Storm, and also Crowbar. And he did well for a little bit. Probably made some real money for a couple years when wrestling was really at its peak in the 2K. So he brought me to where he trained, and brought me into the office. And I was like, it was $5,000, and the guy who ran I probably could have gotten $5,000 from my parents, and I could have really tried it. I remember even talking about it, because at that time there was a lot of dudes my height that were becoming like big stars, like Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero and others. And 100%, the biggest regret of not trying to do it. Like right now, I work with several WWE guys that you would know and et cetera. And others will say like you could walk on to Monday night and run the mic. Like you could talk in front of 18,000 people and and do what we do. Like you don't. The first public speaking course I ever went to, that you had to say in front of everybody like why you were there. And I said, well, I do a lot of seminars, I speak a lot, but the only preparation to become a public speaker was being a wrestling fan for 25 years. And they were like, well, you know what? You kind of got the stage presence down pretty good. The thing is that if I had become if I tried to become a professional wrestler at that time, which is probably similar odds to becoming a professional athlete, very, very low, I'm not sure I would have developed the confidence and the speaking skills that I have now. So even though I might look the part, at the moment, I'm pretty sure I would not be able to go through a lifestyle of those types of athletic endeavors day in and day out. But it's always just been something that has been part of my calendar. Like I have to build around my Monday, so I'm free. Or if I can't watch it, I have to record it and like, okay, when will I watch it? Because you have to watch it before the next one. And if you can't watch the next one, you basically have to do like a binge of all these things to catch up of what's happening. Now, and the coolest thing was when I met Shane McMahon for the first time. He was very flattering because maybe my arms looked big at the time. And I said, listen, man, I'll probably never meet your dad, but I got to tell you something. If I ever met your dad, I'd give him 2 words. And he's like, oh, you're going to say something crazy. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you for giving me something every week to look forward to. And Shane was like, that's never what I thought you were going to say. I'm like, I know what you thought I was going to say. And that's why I phrased it that way.
Yeah.
Because that's a very famous wrestling catchphrase. And that's all it is. It's something to look forward to. And for so many years, if I didn't have it, it would feel different. I know my life wouldn't be over, and very often wrestling sucks. It's not a fun thing to watch. Like maybe it goes. Wrestling is like this pendulum. It goes and runs, but that it's just something to look forward to, and I think we all need that. We all need something. Just because somebody doesn't like the same thing I like, that's fine. But you need a hobby. You need something to look forward to. That's Disney and wrestling. How about that?
It's awesome. It's awesome, man. This is This was great. This was.
We're gonna have to do it in 2 parts.
We will, and we can, We'll have to have you back on.
I talk too much.
No. I mean, come on. If I gotta pull teeth, it makes for a very demanding, podcast. And I've actually had some friends do that on me. I've had some friends and teammates where I think they are great campfire storytellers, great people to talk with, and all of a sudden this stiffens them up, in pro sport. All of a sudden you throw this in front of them and they
and we talked about this because I've probably been, relatively of interest, for podcasts in my profession, and we're kind of straddling multiple professions here. But it's the best podcasts for me now are the ones where I don't necessarily talk about clinical things. And that's why I was looking forward to this one. And I don't not like the other ones, especially if the questions become interesting. But a lot of times it's I've done that podcast before because the questions are really meant to highlight the messages that I already have. So I'm saying a lot of the same things. So I was excited to see where these things were going to go. And I've also, as the years have gone on, I'm much more comfortable talking about my failures and some of the things that maybe answer the why of where I'm at today. But I can't squat that much anymore. I'm done, man.
No one's gonna make you. Yeah, you don't have to.
I'm good.
You do it once, you get to say it. But Charlie, if people do want more clinical information or just want to learn more about you, contact you for training, treatment, how can they find you? I know you're active on Instagram.
Yeah, the website is charlieweingroff.com, and that aggregates all the social media. Instagram is chweingroff. Twitter is cwagon75. And as of now, we're in Drive 495. And when I say that, it's because I might be moving to Florida very soon. Drive 495 in Soho, and then I also have offices in Central Connecticut and in Mamaroneck, which is in Westchester County. And I'm on a plane a lot. Haven't been on a plane in a long time, but I'm available. That's what I do. I'm for hire.
If you need any gap analysis.
Yeah, but it's cool. Like a lot of people, they do. It is very flattering that people will travel from far, but New York is obviously a draw where you can check other boxes, and other than your healthcare and working with the surgeons that I'm very, very close with at HSS. A lot of people you kind of get a jump the line card when you work with me or one of those surgeons, and people come in and they get an experience for several days between what the surgeon can do from a diagnostic level and then what we can do from a physical therapy level. So, but yeah, I'm sure my Twitter will be very interesting. Where one tweet will be something that people are like, "What the hell is he talking about?" And then the next one will be a picture of me and Optimus Prime from Universal. So.
You're allowed to be that well-rounded, right? Like you're allowed to be professional and passionate about other stuff. It's
my business mentor was like, for what you charge, if somebody looks you up, you think they're going to give you that amount of money if they look up and see all your stupid Disney pictures? And I'm like, 5-6 years later, seems to be working out.
I love that. Do it your own way, man. That's awesome. Well, this was awesome. Thanks, Charlie. I really appreciate your time, and
all right.
All the best, man. Stay healthy out there. And if you do move to Florida, all the best with that. I know you and Allie had to, postpone the wedding. So I hope you guys are doing cool there and, getting excited about when that's coming up. But thanks, man. Thanks for your time.
Cool, man.
You're the man. Thank you to everyone for joining us here today on the Curious Competitor podcast. Charlie can tell a story. I always love talking to him. But today in particular, I thought when he talked about the 151-1 sort of formula for how he uses this framework for his life and how he determines what he values in his life and kind of uses some Eastern thought there. When he was talking about, how Zen played a role in the conversation with, one of his mentors. I really appreciated that part because I didn't realize he was so calculated and conscientious about these different areas of his life. He's clearly a really high-end professional, but he also is a very passionate person and well-rounded outside his job, which admittedly you can see he has a deep obsession and deep knowledge for. I also thought our time today with Charlie was awesome when he shared how he's used failure as a launch pad. He clearly talks about, with great emotion, some of the career struggles and some of the ups and downs that he's gone through as a healthcare provider and in pro sport. And I think that, given my background, I'm very sensitive to the volatility of pro sport. And I thought he talked about his relationship with failure in a way that is something that I'm really going to try to, download into my own life. And another thing I honestly didn't know about Charlie was just how much he loved Disney. And I love when he talked about being an experience collector. I think, in my own personal life, I have a tendency sometimes to overwork and not make time for, some of the very important things that, Charlie was talking about, like wanting to be there, for his kids someday on Saturday on football night. I think it's something that, in my own life, you can never get good enough at. And what it really struck to me was the concept of balance. I think achieving balance is this abstract, really difficult goal, but just knowing that it's out there and knowing what imbalance looks like has been, a great North Star for me. And, I'm grateful that Charlie shared his experience with being an experience collector. Finally, if you're still with us, thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for continuing to support. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment. I do try to read them, so I really appreciate your feedback. And have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us.